I walk through the shadow of death left to fear. This is a journey through the halls of hell.
Yes people, what is good? I am BA and today I'm reviewing the movie Home Alone. What can I really say about Home Alone that hasn't been said already? Obviously it's an absolute classic of its genre, but it's more than that. It actually became one of the staple Christmas movies, which is kind of a hard thing to do when you think about it. There isn't too many films that you think are institutional for certain families to watch around Christmas time, and Home Alone is definitely one of them. It's directed by Chris Columbus, but all credit should go to the legendary John Hughes who wrote the script for this. It's an amazing script all the way through. It's witty when it needs to be witty, it makes both children and adults laugh, and it has a cohesive, coherent story you're invested in from the beginning to end. Not many movies just manage to tick all the boxes. Every scene in it is good. There's not one scene where you're like, that makes this movie less than it should have been. They just managed to cross all their T's, dot all their I's, and hit every high note possible throughout this entire film. Rewatching it is almost bittersweet to me nowadays, simply for the fact they truly will never make movies like this again. A part of me cannot wait until AI gets advanced enough that it can generate its own movies, because I will just ask it to generate a never-ending stream of early 90s John Hughes scripts so I can enjoy myself until the end of time. I'm like a minute and a half into this review so far, and all I've done is gush about the film without actually even going into the details of what happens in it. So we all know the story though. It starts with a really large family, the McAllister family. They seemingly live in a giant house and they have all their relatives over. They're all scurrying around getting ready because the next morning they are leaving to go on holiday. And we get to meet all the interesting characters in his family, his mother, his father, his brother Buzz, Buzzy's tarantula, the little brother that keeps purposely wetting himself. They set up all these little quirky family members, and then through bad luck the family accidentally go all the way on holiday without their kid Kevin. So he is now in this giant house by himself over the Christmas holidays, and two burglars are targeting the house to rob it. That is the premise in a nutshell, and even on paper that premise, like if I was an executive at a movie studio back in the day and John Hughes walked in like, yo, kid is alone in a house over the Christmas holidays by accident, his family can't get back to him and burglars are planning to come into the house, I would have been like, green light, there's $100 million. The burglars are of course played by Joe Pesci, and I think the other guy is Daniel Stern, is that right? I always forget the other guy's name, but they both do a brilliant job at both being menacing to children while constantly providing comedic relief at the same time. That's a really hard thing to juggle without compromising your menacingness, if that makes sense. You know, there's a reason why they don't have in the Halloween movie Michael Myers stalking towards a woman and then slipping on his ass before he gets to her. It takes away from the fear factor. But in this, they managed to get away with both being the classic archetype of the bumbling criminal. It's a classic comedy sketch from the vaudevillian days, retold in this movie. But they managed to capture that, and at the same time, if you're a kid, it would be terrifying if these dudes were going to come break into your house. And John Hughes just thought of a really great way to spend the time in the interim. How do you spend the time leading up to the burglars face off with Kevin when you're not directly building up that conflict? You could have filled that movie with about 45 minutes of scenes which were hit and miss and didn't work, but he chose to look deeper into it and created a whole secondary layer. The concept of, you know, the kid now being the king of the castle. He can do what he wants. He can do whatever the adults used to tell him he can't do. He can eat all the chocolate. He can play loud music. And we get to see that side of it, which again, when you think about it, is genius, because think how much that appeals to kids. You know, it's something that was redone after this in the movie Richie Rich and also Blank Check, because they realised that Home Alone captured the essence of a kid with no power, always being told what to do by authority, all of a sudden now looking round and going, wow, I can do whatever I want. And if you're watching that as a child, it's so cool because obviously you, as a child, cannot do whatever you want. I forget the name of the actor who plays the snow sweep, but you know the creepy old man in the neighbourhood they all make up stories about, that he's some serial killer or something. And later on in the movie, we find out that he's just a bit of a quiet, lonery type because he fell out with his son long ago. Just before Kevin goes back to his house to set up his booby traps, there's a scene where he and the snow sweep guy have a conversation in the church. And I am a musician. I don't generally focus on sound design when I watch stuff though. I understand that cinema, even though it's a multiple sensory art form, is predominantly a visual one. So I'm generally paying attention to the picture first and the music secondary. It takes a lot for something musical to stand out to me. But to this day, I think one of the best music design choices in maybe movie history is at the end of the conversation they have in the church, the Carol of the Bells starts playing, which is quite a haunting song. And they mix that into the music which plays while Kevin is preparing his battle plan. And that music is so badass, and it's got bells mixed into it, so it's still got a little bit of Carol of the Bells going throughout it. And we see him drawing up his battle plan and then setting up the booby traps throughout his house. When you were a kid, that was the most badass fucking thing of all time. A little dude by himself. He should have been terrified. He was ready to mount a defence against any oncomer, and as a Scottish person, I'm sure you can see why that might appeal to me. No, all joking aside, as a kid, like, that was just the most badass thing ever. I know this is a silly Christmas movie, but to this day, that shit is like borderline gonna give me chills every time I watch it. And then when the burglars do enter the house, I mean, some of these traps are genius. I love the fact he just hosed the steps knowing they would freeze, so all the steps are super slippery. There's the iron that's been repurposed as a fake light switch, the red hot door handle, the micro machines, the paint tins on the staircase. It's such a cool booby trap house. So was this a right place, right time thing? Was this a cultural phenomena? Has it unfairly crept into the cultural zeitgeist? No, there's a reason why Home Alone, you know, it's a silly family movie really of its genre, and it is a million times better than it has any right to be. It is far greater than any way you could quantify or categorize it by genre. The script is just a one-of-a-kind, brilliantly, cleverly written script. Dialogue, scene selection, building up to high points, crescendos, and especially having the warmth and heart that you truly need to be a classic Christmas movie. Between the snow sweep guy telling the story about how him and his son had a falling out and they never spoke again, and Kevin having a talk to him and giving him good advice, and then Kevin reconciling with his family at the end and they actually appreciate him. That's the heart that, you know, holds it together. That when you're all sitting round at Christmas, you are all reminded, you know, family is important, and that's why families enjoy watching this at Christmas. It's simple psychology, but when you put a layer of that into a movie as brilliant as this, it's just another string on the already perfect bow. Absolutely infinitely rewatchable. I can't remember a single time I've put on Home Alone and been like, yeah, this is starting to drag for me. Can we watch something else? Like, never once in my life. I've just watched it till the end every single time. Okay, Home Alone again. Cool. And also, I don't know where you guys are on the Macaulay Culkin timeline, because I think a lot of people checked out back in the day when the tabloids were showing him in his early 20s. He developed certain drug addictions at the time, according to the tabloids, and looked like he was about to fucking die. Well, just in case anybody was actually curious, he did not in fact die. He has a podcast nowadays. He even appeared on the Angry Video Game Nerd episode about the Home Alone video games, which is cool, because if you guys don't know, James Rolfe, the Angry Video Game Nerd, was actually the king of YouTube back in 2005. But you know what the problem was? I'll tell you right now. He was actually a nice person that doesn't really care about all the metrics and hits and views and shit. And thus, over time, insidious people who are destined to climb to the top of every industry because they do care about that shit, gazumped him. But you see that guy, just off of his sheer creativity, character creation, and movie making skill, he was the king of YouTube in 2005, and Macaulay Culkin appeared on an episode of his web series. And he seems to be in a lot better health nowadays. He seems to understand everything he's been through. God only knows what it must be like to be a super famous child actor, not just a famous child actor, he is potentially the most famous one of all time. That has got to fuck your head up. So the fact he's came out of the other side nowadays and he seems like a fairly balanced individual considering the money he's probably had access to most of his life, much respect to him. And if you haven't seen Home Alone, are you trying to get yourself beaten with a stick or something? Go and watch Home Alone. And if you've liked this review, like, subscribe, comment down below, come over to the Patreon, sign up and help support me personally, and until next time, I have been BA, peace.